Hi, I'm Frankie Tees. As a writer and survivor of SA and CSA, I'm here to report on the story of Cathy O'Brien, one MKUltra victim. Her 3 books and her documentary will be the topic of Season 3 of Frankie Files Podcast. Find out more at FrankieFilesPodcast.com. Would you like to do a podcast ad spot exchange? Hit me up at FrankieTees@Substack.com. Grab some show merch and support my work on cults through 2024. New digital original drawings by me are related to surviving a cult or sunshine, positivity, and reggae. Find the link at FrankieTees.Substack.com and look for the word tease, T-E-E-S.
Trigger warning. Some people may find topics discussed in this episode difficult. Please proceed with caution.
Welcome to the world of Cult Kids. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 94 of Frankie Files Podcast. I'm Frankie Tees. Well, a note at the top of today's show, a special note. I've successfully contacted Cathy O'Brien via the internet, and this author is not only alive, she's lecturing, touring various United States locations, and doing events. She also blogs at locals.com and posts her latest views and interviews, and you can follow her for free or join. It's about $5 a month, I think. Locals.com, just search Cathy O'Brien with a C, Brien. She's on X at Real Cathy O'Brien. Also, her website is trance-formation.com. Trance, T-R-A-N-C as in cat, E. Look for her links to the books there, official books. There's a lot of fake ones out there. The documentary we already started with reviewing at the top of Season 3 this year is also there. If you want to go back to Season 3 and start from the beginning and read her first book along with us, that's what Season 3, Episode 79 starts with. Like I said, we started with that. Trance.movie is the website for that. The documentary, Trance Formation, the Cathy O'Brien story is astounding. It's in her own voice, so that's what's amazing. It's a website, again, trance.movie. And it has her picture as the 2019 release. There's another movie with, of course, right? That's algorithm over top of hers. Now, in episode 94 here, in this episode, I'll finish looking at the book Trance, T-R-A-N-C-E, as in hypnosis. Okay, Trance Formation of America, the true story of a mind-controlled slave by Cathy O'Brien. But as promised, we'll be discussing the story she endured along with her daughter. Until the year's end. Take that, stalkers and censors. Just saying, this stuff is really suppressed. Right now, we're finishing Transformation of America today, and book 2 and 3 by this author are next. June starts access denied for reasons of national security. Now, due to the absolutely life-changing book I'm reading, PTSD Time to Heal, I'm urging you listeners, survivors of all types, anyone with any type of PTSD, to do her process in the book. She already did it herself and knows it works. And listening to Cathy, you can see the healing in play. It's literally imperative we don't go around triggered in these times. Angry is not going to work. It's too easy to get us to do things outside of our right mind when angry, and it's really dangerous. And it's the norm now, instigating people to do stuff. So Cathy has brought the process Mark Phillips helped her use, basically write it out. This survivor is legitimate, and I would never worship someone or view them uncritically. But having said that, since I've been searching about programming and deprogramming myself for 40 years, Clearly this would have turned up, but not for the old algorithm suppression of truth. And it's a lot of suppression. We can come together, though, regardless of race, religion, sexuality, and apply these methods and stop the endless trauma triggering that's going on right now. It's absolute madness. In the United States, it's like a psychological warfare has been unleashed. And it's a silent war. Sure, there's screaming and stuff on the Today Show, but I'm not talking about that. It's everywhere. I feel it's since 2016. At the same time, I'm attempting to heal from my programming in a cult, which I'm finding is not as limited a time period as I had thought. This is where the veils are lifted sometimes by the techniques Cathy's talking about. So a reminder to get these books by author Cathy O'Brien to absolutely send you on your own learning path. Access the logic center of the brain and see memory more clearly. Pen and paper is required to do so. You do not need to worship or believe Cathy O'Brien to follow these methods. I ask you just hear her out as I am. We are all doing this together on the show for season 3. Some quick links before we jump in to today's show. Our show's website is FrankieFilesPodcast.com. The author's website is Trance-Formation.com. And the spelling is like hypnotism. That's her point. TRANC as in candy, E-formation.com.
The Frankie Files.
There's just nothing so pertinent to my personal journey as these works I'm reviewing now, and to what we are seeing in the world. Who better than a previous presidential model, groomed and enslaved sexually, even enslaved to breed a replacement for her near her scheduled death at age 30? Who better to tell us the warning signs of mind control than this survivor? We're out of the part where Cathy is forced to help initiate the dissolving of the Mexican border with the start of the Juarez border to Mexico and United States, and for that she needed to be snuffed out for her knowledge of it and all that were involved, and the leaders of U.S. and Mexico's continued safety. Chapter 32 and the end of this book. Alex Houston had maintained his capacitor distribution business cover throughout the years. Remember, Alex Houston is the ventriloquist who is the handler and married on paper to Cathy O'Brien. He also handles Kelly, the daughter, pimps them out, etc. By summer's end, in 1987, Houston had stumbled into a legitimate sales inquiry from the People's Republic of China. Unable to profitably manage a legal business, he took on a partner whom he said checked out to have a curious but inconclusive association in U.S. intelligence. This partner was Mark Phillips. Houston had forbidden me from meeting Mark until his background check was completed and his allegiances understood. As much as he was intrigued with Mark's past, Houston was enthralled with his propensity for conducting international business. In exchange for Mark's cooperation, Houston and he formed a legal corporation. Mark Phillips became president and CEO of Uniphase, P-H-A-Y-S-E, that is. It wasn't long after that he won Houston's confidence through repeated professional success, and Houston permitted me to meet him. Now, this is the crack in reality that saved her life. To continue from chapter 32 of the end of Trance Formation, I sensed right away, she says, that Mark was very different from the other men I encountered routinely. He treated me as though I were a person. His eyes revealed no sexual interest in me at all. Instead of discussing world domination, slavery, pornography, drugs, and genocide, like the other men I knew, he introduced me to the raccoons he had years ago rescued from certain death and then tamed. I was deeply impressed with his wild pets and how they loved and trusted him. I could not think to trust, ask for help, or even question at the time what it was that made Mark different. Cathy continues that, and she's talking about her daughter Kelly now. as evidenced by the near-death asthma attack she endured, further proved that Houston's tortures were too much for a 7-year-old child to coexist with. In retrospect, that remaining part of her mind that could question why her existence was too horrible to comprehend was locked away. And so it goes in the life of a mind-controlled slave. And what Cathy is referring to, she's taught us earlier, is that a trauma would take place, it goes into the amnesic barrier, and they make sure to traumatize it in place with another trauma, either electrocution or something horrific that boggles the mind. Continuing, by the time Houston returned to Tennessee from his NCL cruise, Ken Riley had already emptied the motorhome and dispersed the drugs as previously planned. Because remember, she's a drug mule. Continuing, the only business Houston had to attend was implementing the final phase of transferring Kelly and me to Dante and being updated on Mark Phillips' latest success. Reminder, Dante is the West Coast porn king employed by the White House. I asked him to help Kelly and me to get away from Houston before I was killed, and Kelly was sentenced to a fate worse than death. Mark assured me that he would help. Reminder, read the book for all the details, not trying to do a lot of spoilers here. But Mark Phillips, in bed with Alex Houston for international business, discovers that he is a pedophile, as a Japanese business dealer shows him photos. Mark Phillips then orchestrates, as only a former CIA spook could do, a quiet exit from the Tennessee home for Cathy, he, and Kelly. Mark, in the middle of a divorce, was not then locked to an address. He took them to Alaska and attempted to help them heal. That is a brief intro to these excerpts here. Continuing. Within 2 hours, Mark safely moved Kelly, me, and our pets and livestock to freedom. Despite brilliant orchestration, pandemonium broke out when it was discovered that Kelly and I had been intercepted and detoured from our intended demise. Now they're in Alaska and both are in total amnesia, as designed by all who programmed her. Their brains are not working. She can't just give facts and information, it's locked away behind trauma. So Cathy is so disoriented and in a state of timelessness, she doesn't know the day or year or time. She just knows that she is supposed to die on her 30th birthday, which is coming soon because they keep reminding her of that. Mark asks, "Did you say someone is trying to kill you? Why?" I could not think to answer. I was totally amnesic. Continuing, Mark understood that safety was tantamount to memory recovery. At the same time, none of us could be safe until I could recall who and what we were up against. Mark quickly sold everything he owned, including his DeLorean, retaining only basic necessities. He also sold the motorhome, which had been awarded me in a divorce from Alex Houston. So to comment, the first thing Alex Houston did was have his funds and assets frozen so that Mark didn't have any money. They immediately made him broke, unable to access his resources. He also decided for safety to avoid visiting his son, that's Mark, who lived with his ex-wife. I mean, talk about a high exit cost. Continuing from chapter 32, using these funds, Mark took Kelly and me to a peaceful wilderness of Alaska. February 4th, 1988, marked the beginning of life for Kelly and me. Cathy continues, free from our mind-controlled existence. It also marked the beginning of a new kind of survival as we embarked on the most dangerous game of international proportions.
The Frankie Files.
Welcome. Hi, I'm Frankie Tees. As a writer and survivor of SA and CSA, I'm here to report on the story of Cathy O'Brien, one MKUltra victim. Her 3 books and her documentary will be the topic of Season 3 of Frankie Files Podcast. Find out more at FrankieFilesPodcast.com. Despite death threats and attempts, intimidation, and cover-ups, we've survived these past 7 years by refusing to keep secrets, which is in itself another story. Chapter 33. Kelly's frustrations have mounted beyond her ability to cope. Cathy says, I applaud, and she's speaking of her daughter, Kelly, for her determined but weakened efforts to stay in control of her own mind, despite being denied qualified rehabilitation for the devastating results of Project Monarch mind control abuses. Kelly's daily attempts to accomplish the impossible by psychologically maintaining her psychiatric disorder is proportionate to her high intellect and willful determination. But it is not enough to fend off the psychological warfare that has been waged against her through CIA damage containment practices designed to keep her contained in an amnesic silence. She needs help. She needs a collective voice. In the last parts of Trance Formation, the book, there's a call to action. Cathy says Kelly can be helped through public outcry and through abolishment of the 1947 National Security Act and the 1984 Reagan Amendment to the same act. And that has destroyed the true security of our once great nation. Cathy continues, you can write to your congressmen and senators demanding that the so-called National Security Act be reclaimed. Do it today. Update now that Kelly is 18. This sets up the entire book we'll be covering, which gets less coverage due to the absolute suppression Cathy O'Brien has experienced by her once owners. Let's face it, they hold the purse strings and all the media. But there's always word of mouth, and this is exactly how we all find out about Cathy O'Brien. If you ever get discouraged, remember she printed this first book and hand-delivered it to Congress and Senate members personally or by mail. Before internet was flyers. We put flyers around or handed them to people. It's still a thing that can happen. So never get discouraged. I mean, these are the tales of absolute oppression beyond anything I've ever heard, and look at the resilience Cathy O'Brien shows from outside the system that abused and tormented her. I say bravo to this mother and sex slave. You're an inspiration to all of us as sex slaves and children who were groomed in to sex abuse or abused from birth. Thank you, Cathy. In further chapters, we're taken through the legal maze. Cathy, her rescuer, Mark Phillips, and Kelly, her daughter, are made to walk. The incarceration, very much a coordinated effort between local law enforcement, federal agencies, ex-husband, Hansler, Kelly's insane sadistic father, Cox, and Senator Byrd, with a Y, her and Kelly's owner. An excerpt from page 375 to conclude this book's review. Timeline. February 4th, 1988. Mark Phillips rescued Kelly and me from our tortured mind control existence as slaves of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, Central Intelligence Agency's MK-Ultra Project Monarch. Totally disassociative and amnesic, we fled from our CIA operative mind control handler, Alex Houston, she says my owner, U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd, and Kelly's primary abuser, George Bush, that's George Bush Sr., and the criminal covert, quote, black budget activity funding operations in which we were forced to participate on national and international levels. Cathy says the bitter truth revealed through this 5-year exercise proved justice is no longer available when the National Security Act is involved. What is the act? How was it invoked? What did these 3 people do next? In our following episode 95, available now everywhere, I begin to review Access Denied for Reasons of National Security by Cathy O'Brien and Mark Phillips. She lists the website as accessdeniedbook.com. Now, here's an excerpt to be inspired directly from Cathy O'Brien from Trance, the true story of Cathy O'Brien, with director Adrian Youngblood.
In 1947, National Security Act was put in place just to cover up the CIA's crimes against humanity that they were involved in from the start. Project Paperclip had already happened, and the CIA was joining forces for mind control of the masses at that time. So 1947 is when the National Security Act went into place, when the CIA was formed, coincidentally when Roswell happened, and it was just a a turning point, really, in the history of the United States when the National Security Act went in. It was my experience that national security was invoked to cover up all the crimes that were coming across the border, whether it was human trafficking, drug ops, whatever. Anytime, like, U.S. Customs would catch somebody, they would instantly be released for so-called reasons of national security. So the reasons of national security was something that I was acutely aware was nothing but a cover-up when it was invoked on my daughter Kelly's case, March 17th, 1993. And it was invoked in open court, which is a very, very rare thing. But the assistant district attorney, who was very compassionate with Kelly's case, was telling the judge that he was in violation of, various laws, just counting them out. And the judge said, laws do not apply in this case for reasons of national security. That was his statement in open court. And he said that right in open court. So as soon as he said it, the records were sealed, and the district attorney had his copy of the records. And coincidentally, which I certainly don't believe in coincidence, the office of the district attorney where those records were burned. The whole Stallman building caught on fire in Nashville right after that. And it's just one more classic example of the extent that these criminals behind the New World Order are willing to go to cover up their crimes.
Some exciting news. Cathy O'Brien quotes on t-shirts soon. New merch alert. I have her blessing and will be forwarding parts of the proceeds to her directly. The shirts will be at teespring.com. See the show notes for the link and look for those in the next few weeks. It's really exciting news. Sometimes, if you wait long enough and hold out, you find the right people to collaborate with. One of the most important things is that I do not compromise my voice. See you in episode 95. Thanks for listening, rating, sharing, and supporting financially. And never stop critical thinking.
You're listening to The Frankie Files. FrankieFilesPodcast.com.
Hi, I'm Frankie Tees. As a writer and survivor of SA and CSA, I'm here to report on the story of Cathy O'Brien, one MKUltra victim. Her 3 books and her documentary will be the topic of Season 3 of Frankie Files Podcast. Find out more at FrankieFilesPodcast.com.